Now, when we begin living a spiritually driven life, we start becoming aware of the universal law. So there are different universal laws, but in this video, I want to highlight two universal laws that I love so much that I utilize and I implement on a day-to-day basis, and they are universal law polarity and universal law of relativity. So what is universal law polarity? And then I don't want this video to just be the intellectual understanding, but I would love for you to begin implementing and practicing on a day-to-day basis. So universal laws to me is the operating mechanism that is embedded in the universe, right? And it's embedded on its own, right? You do things, right? Which each individual, mine, you and I, think thoughts and feel feeling and take action. And depending on that universal law, the mechanism of the law, the universe, those thoughts and feelings and action start creating a reciprocal effect and begin moving the energetic field. And it's a beautiful thing when we understand it. And then when we begin understanding that every single happening in life occurs based on the energetic resonance, when we begin understanding different universal laws, we can use that to serve us to be aligned with those laws by becoming in alignment with how we're supposed to be operating as a human being. So the universal laws are the mechanism of the universe, the operating system of the universe, right? And then it has something to do with our thinking. It has something to do with our thinking, and it has something to do with our feeling. It has something to do with our emotions. It has something to do with our belief and intention. So let's talk about the universal law of polarity. I can explain this universal law from completely different angles, but today I wanted to explain from the angle of explaining the beauty of this 3D physical realm. So I often talk about we are spiritual being living in the physical body, the physicality, and we have this psycho-emotional mind. Now the mind is a tool to create, right? Sometimes, or for a lot of people, the tool is using most people, but we want to be able to be the owner of the tool so we can use the tool instead of the tool using us to create. So the first thing that we must understand is that this universe is a creative living matrix. So what that means is that when we think thoughts, either positively or negatively, deliberately or as a default, we're gonna end up creating something, right? So let's say if you think of something that you want and being impressing that into your subconscious state, you will be creating what's congruent with what you want. Now, if you're focusing on the thoughts and the energy of what you don't want, you're still creating, because the creative mechanism is non-stop, just like the law of gravity exists. The creative mechanism of the mental law is non-stop. So we end up creating what's congruent with what we don't want. So this 3D physical world has the opposite: left and right, up and down, inside, outside, dark and light, pleasure and pain. And in the spiritual plane, we call this the realm of the spirit is absolute, the realm of the physical is relative. So the relativity is a little bit different, similar, but a little bit different from the polarity, where there is a degree in different things. So small exists when there's something bigger, right? And even left exists in comparison to right. Over here exists in comparison relative to over there, right? So the spaciousness that we have in this 3D physical world gives us a different relativity. But also, relativity exists also in the mind, because the sense of value, what's valuable, the size of the value is different depending on the perspective that we choose, right? Now, I often talk about, when you, let's say for instance, when you are 5 years old, you were smaller, right? When you were smaller, therefore the world was bigger, right? Everything was bigger. And because of the lack of experience when you were 5 years old, different things were, you were feeling more unknown, more difficult, more different from how you're feeling after you gain experience. So depending on the experience, depending on the perspective, you start seeing the bigness, the smallness, the littleness, the largeness, the difficultness, the easiness. And what we want to do is to be able to use this universal law of relativity in order to serve us to feel good. Because the more we can create an experience, inner experience that allows us to feel good, to feel expansive, to feel lighter, the more things start circulating. Okay, so I kind of talked about the universal law of polarity and the relativity both kind of in conjunction, but let's go one by one, right? So you cannot feel and experience happiness without experiencing the opposite of it. So another layer of this is that the realm of spirit is absolute, right? So there's no experience. You would not be experience happiness in the realm of spirit. The experience can only be experienced when you have the body and the mind. So we came to this earth plane to experience the lack of pleasure, lack of happiness, some challenges, so that we can begin creating and bring your attention to the opposite, what makes us feel expansive. Could be happiness, could be love, could be freedom, could be ease, peace, all of the above. And then when you begin understanding that, you start begin changing the way in which you see negativity. Negativity is necessary in order to appreciate and shift into positivity. There's opposite in everything. There's nothing that is only bad. A lot of things that happened in the past that you feel that's so horrible, there's gonna be also good in that bad. And the good might not be able, you might not be able to see the good until later, until after the fact, because that thing was so horrible back then when it happened, right? But in this physical relative realm, bad, only bad can never exist. It's just impossible because it's in a relative realm, right? And also we have this, the law of opposite. Yeah. So we want to be being able to use what we don't want, negative stuff, or what makes us contract in a way that allows us to guide and navigate into opposite. So what that really means is that we want to determine to not to let that contrast, the negativity, to absorb us, and note that that is always going to be in the physical realm because that's the nature of the 3D physical world. But the ability and awareness that we must cultivate is to create a perspective shift. Perspective shift of, oh, this is what's happening. How do I want to choose to see this so that my energy can stay connected with the opposite? My energy can stay connected with relatively feels easy, and lighter. Yeah. So let me give you an example of how you can utilize the universal law of polarity and universal law of relativity. Now, think of your past experience that you think that sort of was a pivotal moment in a negative way, right? When that happened, it was very negative for you. For instance, I had so many injuries in the past. I don't know why, right? I had, I saw my forehead, back of the head. I even had, this is kind of interesting story. I had this, I was running and I fell and my nail was very long, right? And the moment I stood up, somebody stepped on my nail and I peeled my entire nail, right? And I can't remember when was that, but I was very little. And then that's not the end of the story. I went to the hospital and the doctor didn't put an oil in the gauze. So when he put over the things to kind of protect the nail, because it wasn't oily, the whole thing stuck in my nail. And then there was another layer of needing to peel and then remove that, which was painful, right? So I experienced all of those, right? If you are a male and then know what Osgood-Schroeder disease is, when you are a male and then when you grow very fast during teenage and do either basketball or soccer, because that pressure creates pressure in the knee, your bones start growing much faster than the muscular tissue, and you start having that in the knee area sticking bone, and then you start creating inflammation. So I had that on my left. Actually, I had that on my both knees, but stays longer in my left. And I was told that if the pain doesn't dissipate after I stop growing, you need to have an operation, right? The pain dissipated after I stopped growing, so I didn't need to do any operation. But the experience of pain was for a long time. Even the oldest painful experience that I have is when I had asthma, right? I grew up suffering from asthma. So it's not a physical pain, but it's a struggle, right? And you start experiencing all those challenges and pain in life. And back then I was just sort of being absorbed by it, right? And I was trying to figure out what to do. But now that I know what I know, based on what I have being exposed to and experience and watching people and studying and then practicing it, every single challenges and pain that I had was a blessing, because then I have this understanding and awareness and perspective that I have nourished and nurtured and cultivated. Therefore, I'm able to do things the way I do it. So when you come across negativity, contrast, something that feels painful, something that feels dark, you might not like it and resist it. Nobody wants to feel pain. Nobody wants to feel the darkness. But I think if we understand that we're a spiritual being and there's a journey of the soul, and the essence and the nature of the 3D physical world is that we must go through some darkness, pain, and then contrast in order to remember who we are, in order to wake up into the essence of who we are, which consists of light, love, freedom, is all of the things that we are seeking through the attainment of something or the experience of something, through having and doing. In this 3D world, many people are seeking that experience, right? Because ultimately, let's say if you have something that you want, it's not that you want that, but you want to experience that feeling of the state when you have it. You want to experience the feeling of the state when you're doing something, right? So we are feeling seekers ultimately. So you might assume that you want this thing, have a relationship with this, and this kind of experience, but ultimately and essentially we're seeking the feeling. And that feeling is love, freedom, expansion, ease, and peace, all of those. And then that is the very nature of who we are. So by experiencing contrast, the opposite, we want to understand that that is a gateway to dive deeper into who we are, remembering. So using this universal law of polarity, my invitation is to begin changing the relationship with how we encounter what you do not want, how you encounter, how you choose to meet pain, how you choose to meet darkness, how you choose to meet anything that makes you feel resisting just for a moment, but then knowing that that is actually a gateway to be able to get in touch with who we are. Now, the universal law of relativity, let's talk about that. So, universal law of relativity, we want to use in a way that remove resistance, right? So let's say if you have a project at work or something that you want to do, or you have a difficult conversation with somebody important, right? And just by using the term important project or difficult conversation, you're making that situation heavier and more resistant. Yeah. If you don't have any of those, you can just apply to your version of any situation or life event that you're actually expecting, assuming in a certain way that is making you feel a little bit heavy, therefore resisting, right? So what we want to begin exploring is how can we call it differently, first of all, so we can change the perspective where we're seeing from, and how we can make it a little bit lighter, right? So it's that important project, wouldn't that exciting, right? When we finish it, right? Wouldn't that fulfilling, because it requires some dedication, right? So begin changing the language, because language contains feelings and energy, and when we use it, when we think it, and when we feel it, there's gonna be that energetic permeating and filling up our body. So the more we feel lighter, the more we feel less resistant, we feel more flow and expansive, and we want to use the shift in our perspective using that universal law of relativity by looking at from a different angle, different perspective to remove resistance. And the more we are, the less we have, the resistance, the more we feel expansive, the more we feel lighter, the more we feel grounded. And the lighter we are, the more expansive we are in alignment with the essence, right? So using the universal law of polarity, universal law of relativity, we want to meet and face each and every moment, life event, situation, shifting our awareness and perspective so that the mind, the psycho emotion can be connected more to align with the essence of who we are. And then when you make this as a lifestyle, using the mind as a tool and understanding the universal operating system, the mechanism of the cosmic mind, you will be in the flow, dancing and swimming through the energetic resonance, owning your tool called the mind and the vehicle called body, and you will be having so much fun being in the energy of joy, enjoying every single moment, and you will be able to serve and touch more people by being in that energy. So that is the usage and the practical application of the universal law of polarity and relativity. Now, if you know anybody who you think that will benefit from this video, I would love for you to share. And if you have any comment question, feel free to comment below. And I hope that you got something out of it, the benefit from it. And I will see you in the next video.